This video is regarding the legal issues regarding polygamy and polygamous culture, and specifically in the West. Whenever I tell people who have not been exposed to my work about polygamy, one of the first things they ask me is, well, I thought that was illegal. Well, wait a minute, you can't do that. Polygamy is illegal. But actually, polygamy is not illegal. Bigamy is illegal. Now, there's a difference. Bigamy is strictly a legal term. It is not a cultural term. Even though legal matters are part and parcel of a particular culture, in this case, we're talking about its roots. Bigamy has never been something which originated out of some deep cultural value that a people had. Bigamy was created to shame and to punish those who engage in polygamy, specifically polygyny. Although in this case, bigamy can apply to a woman who is married to different men in different state documents, or a man who has two or more women on state documents. In other words, if you currently have a consort who you agreed who you contracted with under your particular state, let's say if you live in Iowa, if you have a so-called wife in Iowa, and then you have one in Idaho or in Michigan, well, now you're a bigamist. Polygamy, however, is first a cultural term. It covers the whole cultural gamut. It covers legal matters, it covers jurisprudence, it covers everything. And this is something that is difficult for people to understand when it comes to differences. Even when you have polygamy being regulated by civic law, for instance, in South Africa, where you have 3, maybe 4 different types of law that allow for polygamy. You have the traditional law, you have the civic law, and you have a couple of others that one applies to Islamic families, and then I believe there's another level. Now, I may be wrong. I'm still referencing a lot of this material that I've been going through, but you never need the law to approve of you engaging in polygyny, because it's really a matter of you carrying out the act of marriage, meaning that you consummated or you've added someone to your household as a maid servant. In most cases, the servants are going to be women. And you don't always have to sleep with your maid servants. That's not a rule. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes the man of the household is serving as a judge to help her find a man to marry. And once she finds a man to marry, she goes through the courtship process. Then she goes with that man's household. You will find instances where her and her man, the decision is made for them to join the previous man's household as servants. That does happen to this day. You have to remember, being a servant to others takes a lot of humility and takes patience, and it takes a high level of skill and know-how. But anyway, polygamy is not illegal. In fact, outside of Utah, you don't find polygamy on the books in any state. Not that I've seen. And I've looked. I've combed a lot of different documents. I've looked on the internet. I haven't seen anything. I've even spoken with an attorney who specializes in defending polygamous families who say maybe breaking cohabitation laws, which can happen. There's actually one reason, guys, that ideally you should keep your women in separate homes on the same land. If not the same land, the same neighborhood. I said in the Polygamous Papers, the first volume, that you should never live outside of a 10-minute walking radius of your women. This is ideal. Remember, we're in the context of war, though. So I speak of ideals in the context of war. If you can help it, make sure you keep your women in as close of proximity as possible. If you live in just an average neighborhood, instead of, say, a country town where people are semi-isolated, you have acres of land, the nearest neighbor is a quarter mile away or more, you may end up having a woman living in the same house with you, or multiple women living in the same home, You may have one of your women living down the street. It happens. Okay, I've seen this on a few occasions. But anyway, many states like Michigan has cohabitation laws. They don't want you, living with someone you're not married to. Now, cohabitation laws are rarely enforced. Rarely. Utah, they were getting a lot of people who are polygamists on that law, but because of the ruling in 1890 that polygamy is illegal, a lot of people in Utah took that to heart, and a lot of families are broken up. The U.S. government actually went in and they were killing Mormons. I'm not Mormon, but I also don't support murder. That's actually against Torah. The U.S. government was sending in military personnel to murder citizens of Utah, all right, who were polygamists and who were part of the Mormon faith. Very deep history. Mormons have left quite a large amount of documentary evidence regarding their lifestyle in polygamy. In fact, a lot of the women have left their own documentation, and they give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that's the good thing about the documentation of Mormon families that have been compiled in a lot of different books. You'll find these editors who have compiled these documents. They've gotten people to comment and scholars to provide their insight. If polygamy were illegal, let's ask ourselves some questions. Whenever you think you know something about a topic, start asking yourselves questions. Okay, start asking yourself questions about the topic. For instance, if polygamy were illegal, why are there not multiple arrests on the books for polygamous families? Because most polygamous families worldwide are not Mormon or Muslim. Okay? But why aren't people being arrested even in the West for polygamy? Maybe bigamy, or bringing in, even, let's say if you live in the UK, bring in, say, a wife from outside the country, say from Saudi Arabia. You might be trying to bring in another woman in there, and then you start getting government subsidies. That's illegal. You're breaking the law. But how come people like Cody Brown, who he and his 4 wives have a show called Sister Wives, why haven't they been arrested? Do you think that a major network would contract with a family and then air for several years, which, that show is still running? Why would they still be out and about? They haven't been arrested for engaging in polygamy. Why are they not imprisoned? And this is in Utah. Why have they not been imprisoned? Ask yourself that question. Why have Joe Darger and his family, his 3 wives, his 3 consorts, who wrote a best-selling book called Love Times 3, if they wrote a best-selling book, do you think that a major publisher would sign a contract with them knowing that they are harboring criminals, that they are making deals with criminals, people who are breaking federal and or state law? Why hasn't Joe Darger and his family been in prison? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. Why haven't all the polygamists who openly say they're polygamists in the United States and in Canada, why haven't they been arrested? That's because the government actually doesn't care how many women you have as a man. They don't care how many women you have. They don't care how many children you have. You could go out right now and you could get 30 women, 30 consorts, and have 3 children apiece with those consorts. You got 90 children, 30 consorts, and then yourself. So we're looking at what? 121 people, right? The government doesn't care. What the government does care about is if in the process you are breaking, say, zoning laws. Let's say you've got people sleeping, above a business that you have, that space above the storefront that you have is only meant for commercial purposes and not residential. Yeah, they're gonna say something. If the home that you stay in, or the apartment that you stay in, or the condo that you stay in has a capacity of only, say, 5 people, and you have 15 people in there, well, yeah, now the government cares. If you take your first consort and then you put your 5th consort on state documents. Well, guess what? That's bigamy. Now they care because you're stealing taxes. Remember, the government wants their taxes, and they don't play when it comes to that. They will send the IRS after you quick. All right. You have to ask yourself, well, if I have 8 wives or 8 consorts, how are we supposed to do our taxes? Okay, well, the simple answer is just each of you do your individual taxes, unless you have one of those women on state documents. If you're married under the legal system, which I never recommend, by the way, I actually advise against it, then at that point, then you and her can either file jointly or you can file individually. But your rest of your consorts, they're going to have to file individually. Okay, you are at war and you are being oppressed. All right, at this moment, the moment you're born under this type of system, you are being oppressed. And plus, you just want to reduce your taxes as much as possible. If you build material wealth, you have land, you have assets that appreciate, then you will end up paying less taxes over time because your total net worth will be taxed at a lower rate. This is why there's been a big complaint about taxing the rich, when most wealthy people are only paying between 4 and 10% on the taxes. So again, polygamy is not illegal. It's one of those issues that is benign, and that's why some of you are polygamists, but you're not going to jail because of polygamy. One thing you do have to watch out for, though, is treacherous, I guess you want to call them baby mamas, who don't enjoy your lifestyle. If you have children from a previous woman, guys, you may have to deal with her wanting to call DFACS on you, or Department of Family and Children Services. By the way, that's a racket too. So you ladies who are, putting your men on papers, taking the men to court, your former men to court, there's punishment coming for you. There's punishment coming for you because, child support is a racket. Child support is a racket, and it's not a holistic solution to taking care of one's children. In fact, all children should go with the man, not the woman in the case of a separation. But anyway, I just wanted to cover that